Good morning. How is everybody? Hope you are well. Welcome to another You Be the Behavior Consultant. Waiting to hear myself. I hope. Uh-oh, I don't hear myself. That's not good. Am I there? Oh, there I am. I just have my volume turned down. Woo! That's good. I'm here. All right. Well, good. Let's get into it. We are going to be talking about things that you used to do, but maybe you don't do anymore in your animal training practices because, well, you've grown, you evolved, you've learned so many cool things, and it's kind of been inspired by a little journey of mine looking into my past here. And so, of course, as always, I've got things to kind of prompt our discussion, but I'm really hoping to hear from you and your experiences and your journey today. So I'm going to go ahead and explain what we're doing today here for those of you that haven't been with us here before. This is You Be the Behavior Consultant, a live stream I try to do every Monday, most every Mondays, here now on YouTube. And this is how it works. I usually present a topic for discussion, and then I have a little slide here to ask you some questions and prompt our discussion. We'll get into the topic a little bit more. I've got a few videos to share with you from my past, from some of my consulting work, and then we'll recap it all at the end. Usually it takes us about an hour, and if you are joining us for the replay, that's fine too. Hopefully it will generate some ideas for you as well, get you, in this case, probably reflecting on your journey as an animal trainer. All right, so what we're going to talk about, things that I used to do, and I live here in Texas, and Austin in particular, and if you're a fan of Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble, they have a song called Things That I Used to Do, and that song kept popping into my head over and over again, so you might go listen to that for a little inspiration, because the song goes, things that I used to do that I don't do no more, and it was like a little earworm for me as I was working on this presentation. So that's why I have to have a little Stevie Ray Vaughan there. All right. So what I was thinking about as I was putting this one together is that, as we grow as animal trainers and you reflect back on the things that, maybe you did years ago, but even just a year ago. And I can honestly say for me in particular, I feel like I've had a lot of growth in just recent years, especially getting a lot more into behavior science. We hope that as we gain knowledge and practical application experience, that we also change our behavior, just like we're trying to change our animals' behavior. We're trying to change our own behavior. We don't really want to get stuck in, quote, tradition. We want to keep evolving and changing. And so I started realizing as I was looking at things that I had written in the past, documents that I had written, maybe instructional materials, that, whoa, there are things that I used to do that I just don't do anymore, or I don't even say anymore. There's things in my vocabulary that I just don't, they're not words that I use anymore. And I was really committed to those things in the past. And now I have a completely different thought process, not because those things back then were necessarily bad or wrong or whatever. It's just that my views are very different now based on the things that I have come in contact with over the years and learning from different mentors and other people with different experiences. And it really got me thinking, wow, this journey has been really interesting. And so I'm sure other people have had similar experiences. We all change and grow based on the things that we contact in our environment. And so I'm hoping that, oh, good morning, Alex. Glad that you are here. I'm hoping that you all will share some of the things that maybe are different for you now that you have gone through your journeys and are still going through your journeys. So maybe you have some things that you've specifically learned about behavior science that has impacted your training, or maybe there's some things as you've been practicing this training, whatever we want to call it, practicing training, that has inspired change for you. And now you think differently than you did maybe a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. Some of us have been in this business a long time. So get your wheels turning a little bit here. Think about it a little bit. And I may throw one up here to get us started, but I certainly want you guys to keep, thinking, and feel free to throw something in here anytime something comes to mind for you. But I'll put one up here just to get us started, to give you an idea of what I'm thinking about here. The first one that really came to mind for me was positive reinforcement trainer. I don't call myself a positive reinforcement trainer. I just can't say those words not because I don't use positive reinforcement. I love positive reinforcement. I use it all the time, but I feel like it's kind of a limiting word, because I feel like it kind of says I'm not using other things, or I'm not thinking about all these other tools that I have in my toolbox. And it's made me think about all these other words that I've learned. And I don't know about you guys, but we've talked a lot about functional reinforcers and function-based interventions, and so what are other words that might be appropriate? I don't even know that we have the answer yet. Maybe you guys will come up with a good word today as we're chit-chatting here. But you guys know that I called my company Barbara's Force-Free Animal Training. It's because I thought, okay, well, maybe that's more along the lines, and I liked that I could call it Barbara's Fat for short, because I thought that was funny. So what are the words that really represent my approach now? I started having a hard time thinking about that. So that was one of the things that came to mind for me. What do you guys think? I had a little idea this morning as I was, you have that shower thinking, and I thought, am I an animal welfare-based trainer? Is that what I am? One thing that pops into my head is when I began at my previous facility, we were very cleaning focused. As the years went on, we became less focused on cleaning and more focused on overall animal welfare. Yeah. Ooh, I like that. And was it here we were talking about it the other day? I feel like this conversation came up recently where somebody was saying how those odors might be really significant to animals, that sometimes being overly clean may not be good animal welfare. That maybe some of those, maybe taking away all the scents and all the scent marking was sort of like, maybe it could be an aversive experience. More physiological needs by using training methods to accomplish that versus just being a janitor for the animals. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's I really like thinking about that. Yeah, you're right. So what is the priority for the animal versus what is the priority for the caregiver? Yeah. So, and is having the most clean enclosure what the animal really needs? Does that actually provide the best welfare for the animal? Just because it's physically a physically clean environment, is that meeting behavioral needs or physical needs? Which one's the priority? Ooh, that's a very good, thought-provoking question if we were to look at animal welfare. Ooh, and that makes me go back to this question of, am I an animal welfare-based trainer versus a positive reinforcement trainer? Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. That really, because it is sort of, asking what is it that we're making our priority. And it kind of spins everything back around to this animal welfare question versus, what kind of specific behavior procedure are we implementing? Yes. Ooh, I'm really liking that. Ooh, I got a little chill there. I like that a lot. Oh, cool. All right, you guys, you gotta provide some other thoughts there. Some other folks coming in there with some ideas. Let's see. I can throw up another one. My people, that sounds gross. I can throw up another one. Sounds like I can regurgitate another one. I can put another slide up here while people are thinking and typing. Oh, here we go. From Sean and Masa. For us, the word representing is constructional approach. Yes, I agree with you 100%. And I do have something referring to that in here. Yeah. Oh, you guys are so ahead of me. And Annetta put another one in here too that is I have to refer to as well. So maybe I'll go to the constructional approach first, and then I might go to Annetta's comment, because I have both of those in here as well. For some of my things that have changed as well. Let's see. And does it tie in with my 2 slides? Oh gosh, you guys are hitting 2 of my slides here. Let's see, which one do I go to first? Maybe I go to here. I'll go to linear versus nonlinear contingency analysis, because I think it ties in with what Sean and Masa are saying about constructional approach. So yes, I love that one. So I think that was a big, and we'll get to what Holly and Sully are talking about there as well. Yeah, so for me, this was a huge change in my thinking. Big giant turnaround in my world. So I'm hoping, and I would say that it's still really new for a lot of people, right? Yeah, and Annetta says, I have taught students to never use negative reinforcement. I have totally converted after learning about constructional aggression treatment. Yeah, and so I have removing the positive reinforcement, quote, goggles, which I kind of stole from Dr. Perveen Farhudi. And I think because, and the reason I'm saying that is not so much to say that we shouldn't use positive reinforcement. And what I'm saying there is looking for the other contingencies. I think, and also looking for, when you're training, to think that there might be other procedures that you might be implementing that might involve other contingencies, and that other contingencies are at play in influencing behavior, and that it's not always your intervention may not always just involve a positive reinforcement procedure. And so in this, and that's why I'm saying, removing the goggles, because it can help us identify the functional reinforcers, which is the great stuff that Sean and Masa have been really helping everybody see in their constructional approach to animal welfare and training. And Sean and Masa say to Annetta, yes, we agree there are so many different applications of negative reinforcement. We have to specify how we are arranging it. Yeah, and so that's why I was saying, I also kind of have on here, avoid reliance on contrived reinforcers. Not that we don't use them at when we need to, when we have maybe nothing available to us, but they may be less effective. This is when I go back to the positive reinforcement goggles, and even problematic. They may be a delay to proper intervention, and we may see an increase in undesired responses. And so what I'm thinking about is, let's say we've got that animal that's showing, and I'm going to show you a great little video here. We've got this animal that's showing an aggressive response, and what it really wants is distance from that person. And maybe, the person's saying, well, I'm going to give it food to try and make friends with it. And instead it's like saying, I really want you to go away. And the animal aggresses more to get that person to go away, maybe even aggresses to get the hand that's trying to feed it to go away, just so it can get the food out of the way so that it has the opportunity to aggress. So by doing this, more appropriate analysis of function and determining functional reinforcers, we go straight to the appropriate contingency and use the appropriate procedure, and then we can switch over to, we have an animal that might be open and receptive to positive reinforcement after we do our intervention that might be based on what the animal actually wants in that moment. So that's going to lead me to a video that I haven't shared with you before that I think might be kind of fun to look at. This is one with an iguana that you're going to see, a rhinoceros iguana, showing some aggressive behavior. And then you're going to see, we're going to use a negative reinforcement contingency because the animal wants the people to go away, and so the people are going to go away when we see on these nice calm responses, and you're just going to see 2 reps so you'll see a little bit of increase in calm responses from the iguana.
Like, to get his food bowl in there in the mornings, I lure him over here, open the door and throw it in really fast, and then close the door and stuff like that. But
that was a pretty awesome rep. He laid down. That's pretty awesome.
Like,
so I thought that was a pretty fun one. I remembered I had that, but I hadn't edited it, and so I just wanted to give you a little clip, but a nice example there. So that's definitely something that changed in my life over the last few years, and it looks like it's starting to change for a lot of trainers out there. So let's get back to some of your other comments. And that was, for me, that was quite a while ago when I was first trying out applying some of this stuff. And, and in the past, what I would have tried to do is toss food to that iguana, which is what they were sort of doing, is they were distracting with food while they would, service the enclosure. And now I definitely have different tools, thanks to people like Sean and Masa and Jesus Rosales Ruiz and Joe Lang and all those people that are teaching us about the constructional approach and this nonlinear contingency analysis, and that we've got to look at all these different things. So very, very helpful, and I think it's going to take us into the future here. So it's very exciting. So going back to some of the other things that you guys have commented on here. So let's see. Okay, I do have the timeout thing here. I have it, I think, down on this slide. So let's see, is it on this one? Oh, yeah. So this was on my other slide. So I have the never using timeout, but maybe we do, just a certain kind called non-exclusionary timeout or non-exclusion timeout. So yeah, I agree with you on that one, Annetta, that in the animal training world, a lot of us have said never use timeout, and I never do, or that I don't do it. But I think it's been a terminology thing, right? That I think in the animal training community, we have considered timeout to be the one where you're kind of walking away from the animal, the exclusionary timeout, where you're basically removing yourself or the animal's being removed from you somehow. And so, and we're creating a situation where there's potential for aggressive behavior, frustration, some really unpleasant things, which you have shared with us, some impressive video where things can go really, really bad and wrong. But as you pointed out, maybe the kind of timeout that we do see is maybe what is described at the very beginning of an LRS, where somebody kind of holds very still and doesn't do anything for a couple seconds and waits for some kind of behavior that they can reinforce. And I think what I tend to describe in that we sometimes might see happen is, like, say somebody's playing with an animal, like I described, the example I tend to give is like you're playing with a parrot and the parrot's kind of mouthing your fingers gently, and then it gets a little too rough and you're like, oh, I didn't like that, and so you pull your fingers away. But you kind of you still want to have that in your repertoire, that the parrot can mouth your fingers gently, because it is something, anyone who's got a parrot, you know what I'm talking about. It's something that is kind of nice and fun to do. And so if they mouth you gently and just are kind of licking and kind of, because, parrots will preen the hairs on your fingers and your hair and all that. And so if they're doing it gently, it's kind of nice. But when it gets like a little pinchy, you're like, oh, that sucks. And so you take your fingers away. And then they do it a little bit more, and then, and so you might just like go, oh, no. Well, and it is negative punishment. A timeout is negative punishment for anyone. So then we, so then you might stop for a little bit, but you're still there. You're still present. And then you go, and then you let them play a little bบmore. And so that the appropriate response is positively reinforced, and then you take your hands away. So that would be sort of that, and I think they call it terminate reinforcer. I think it's a removal of a terminate reinforcer. I forget the exact term. Anyway, so that might be another example All right. And then Chris is going back. I used to say I was a positive reinforcement trainer. After learning more about negative reinforcement, I think I would like to say I'm a reinforcement trainer. Yeah, and this is where I went back to maybe, and again, but again, I feel like, but I use negative punishment right there. I'm just talking about it. It might happen. So that's why I'm kind of going to, maybe I'm an animal welfare based trainer. I don't know. I don't know what the right term is. I'm tossing around terms. I don't know. It's going to be tough to find the right thing. So I might come back to this slide because another one that, let's see, I don't want to miss all your terms here. Yeah, and then Holly's saying she's not sure either because she's going through her her different things that she's gone through in her process here. But another one that keeps coming up is the choice and control terminology. And I think I used to use this terminology a lot myself. But I really have a hard time using that terminology now. And I know we've talked about some of these words here. Isn't that too vague? I'm just thinking about in the horse world that it's a 20 plus years behind. Aren't they reinforcement trainers too? But it's not so welfare friendly always. Yeah, that's and not so welfare friendly ways. Yeah, good point. Yeah, that's a good point. So, as we've talked about with reinforcement, positive or negative, we have to look at the specifics of the procedure. So we can't just say reinforcement or positive. We can't even say positive reinforcement is always in the best welfare of the animal. So if the establishing operation is such that oh, sorry. I got off track there. So let's say the animal was deprived of food for a very long time, and this kind of ties in with our choice and control stuff here. We've talked about degrees of freedom and critical consequences before, especially with Sean and Masa. So if they really have only one way that they can access that reinforcer, that food, and say it's a critical consequence, say it's food, they have one way to get it, and it's food, and they've been deprived of it for a really long time. And yes, it's positive reinforcement because it's added, but is that really something that we would consider good welfare, a nice application of positive reinforcement? I don't know. I wouldn't feel super good about that if it were me, and again, I've used the example of, in the zoo world of the tiger that doesn't want to shift inside. But they're saying, the only way you're going to get your food is you have to go through that scary doorway that's been shut behind you when you haven't wanted it to, and you're going to get trapped inside. And so we're just going to wait you out until you're hungry enough to go inside to get it. So it's still positive reinforcement, but it's not a very nice way of getting that behavior. And so there's, I'm sure you guys can think of lots of comparable examples, but it's not really a nice way to get behavior. So, and again, we also know there's ways that negative reinforcement can be used coercively. And so we've got that whole spectrum, right? So positive reinforcement, when the animal has many ways that it can earn that equally reinforcing consequence. So that's how we increase those degrees of freedom. And again, we can ask ourselves if it's a critical consequence or not. So if it's something that the animal needs for survival, and how many responses can it emit to get that same reinforcing consequence. And then I don't know if you guys remember our discussion on assent versus consent. So consent is that thing where the organism has can sign a document basically saying, I understand all my options here, and I may be acquiescing to it, but I may not want to. Whereas assent, we're saying the organism is basically saying, yeah, I'm on board. I want to do it. I'm all about it. And so that's a different thing. Let's see. So Shauna wants to say, great point, Barbara. The analysis of degrees in freedom, coercion to contingency is developed by Dr. Israel Golddime. And yeah, so going back to the people that brought it to us. Wow, sorry, tongue-tied this morning. Choice and control has become a marketing tool like positive reinforcement. This is from Annetta. Also, we say the animals can choose to participate in our training, but what if they don't? Yes, what if they don't? Yeah, what does happen if they don't? Yeah, and Shauna Massa say, Annetta, exactly. What happens if the animal does not engage in this specific behavior? Very good point. What happens? So what happens? So, is it withholding that critical consequence until they do participate? Which I think does happen sometimes, right? It's like, well, we'll come back later when they're a little bit more interested in what I have to offer. Sully says, Annetta, I've been wondering about that too. Yeah, so I mean, those are really important questions. And yeah, I think those are really important questions. So I think this is one of those things for me, and it sounds like you guys are thinking about it too, that I think differently about now. I used to, think, yes, I am giving animals choice and control. And now my brain has to process it and ask different questions to evaluate, am I really giving the animal, quote, choice and control, right? So maybe I ask questions like, how many degrees of freedom does this animal have? Is this consequence a critical consequence? How many opportunities does this animal have to get the same reinforcing consequence in this scenario? Is the animal actually giving assent to participate? And what does assent look like? Can I operationalize assent in this scenario? So you see what I'm saying? So there's different questions I ask now versus whether can the animal, walk away from this. That's not enough of a question for me anymore. Oh, you can only make a genuine choice if it doesn't cost you anything. Not my words, but true. Food for thought, guys. Oh, look at you all. I love all this. Yeah, so we have some, and I just had a little video here of some lemurs to share, and there's no audio, so we can keep talking over it. So this was a while ago. This was before I had this information that I just shared with you in my learning process, in my learning journey. And so these lemurs are free ranging at this particular facility. And we wanted to teach them to recall to these stations. So we were just in the beginning stages of it here. And one of the challenges they were having is the animals would go to the restaurant where the guests were, and they would basically see if they could get food from the guests at the restaurant. And they have, and so we wanted to try and make it so that these stations were a good place to come to. So we were just teaching them that at this stage that grapes and raisins were associated with the stations. And that little house there is also a place where they regularly would get their diet. Let's see. Chris says, I would think the skill of the trainer comes into play, Annetta. Maybe ask the animal a behavior that is very fluent. So skill and knowledge of training is important. Yes, probably in all these things, huh? Yeah. So I think when I think about this video now, going back in this, knowing that these animals have other places where they can get maybe equally or better reinforcing consequences is something that comes into mind as I think about this now. Yeah. I don't know. It causes me to think now. It causes me to think about some of those words that were on that previous slide as I look back on this video. But it was interesting. So I could go back to and feel free to add more stuff if you have about choice and control. And let me see if I missed any of your comments prior, because I got off on a tangent there, didn't I? Let's see. Now some of these we're missing Al today. He must be out hawking because some of these I had in mind when I was writing thinking about flying birds of prey. So we need our free flyers here today. But certainly for me, some of the things that have changed, and but I know we've got Chris here who flies birds, is that relationship between weight and the response towards food acquisition. And I know, for some of you, this is like, oh, I never thought about that anyway, so it wouldn't have changed for you. But, some animal training, there's this perspective that the weight of the animal is really related to how interested they might be in food as a reinforcer. And that certainly changed for me. I was in free flight bird shows for many, many years. And once I kind of got away from it and then went back into it. And I still, am in the world here and there, because there are some facilities that I work with have interest in that. But yeah, I was thinking just yesterday when I was doing a little stuff with Blue, my blue-throated macaw, and I'm like, gosh, I probably should weigh her just to know where she's at, for her health, because I certainly weigh my animals just like, you would weigh yourself to see, are you healthy? But I can't remember the last time I weighed an animal to see if they're interested in food or not. And it occurred to me, I was like, gosh, that doesn't even occur to me. But I did go onto a falconry chat group not too long ago to see, if people talk about it much. And man, that community is just like others. There was a lot of back and forth where people were like, I never do it. It doesn't matter for me at all. I'm just really in tune with, my bird's behavior. And other people are like, oh my gosh, it's a tool. You have to weigh your bird. It takes 2 seconds. But it was very clear. It was still hotly debated as to whether you should weigh or not to let you know whether the animal is going to respond to food. But again, most animals that we train, we don't weigh them at all to find out whether they're going to respond to food. Right, I never thought about using weight management. I worked for a bird trainer who did, and it just didn't feel right or needed for that matter. Yeah, it's so interesting that it's such a big deal for some people, and I think I have the unique experience maybe of having come from that world and now just don't use it at all. So I feel that it's quite interesting, to be able to be in that position and have that perspective on it. So, but I think the group, most of the people in our group here probably haven't had that opportunity to talk about it before. So we won't dwell on it. So how about labeling learning processes as good or bad? So, for another term, the quadrants, labeling the quadrants good or bad. I certainly did that in the past. I think now I just have come to terms with they just are. I don't know about other people, if anybody has thoughts on the learning processes. What do you guys think? Do you still get a little like worried about them, or are you feel a little better about like, oh, I can see them now. I see that's what's maintaining that behavior, and that's what's maintaining that behavior. Some of them make us uncomfortable, but I tend to be more objective, I think, these days. I see it a lot with human behavior better now too, I think. Now that I as I say, like I was saying, taking the goggles off and you start going, oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. That's what's maintaining that, and that's what's maintaining that. Does it stand out any better for people now, or do you feel like you're kind of still in the place of, good or bad? I still think many facilities are stuck in the positive only thinking, even if that may not be the case. Yeah. Maybe for the, it's still, I think that could be the case. I was looking at, some, old, emails. I think somebody was trying to write, like a mission statement for their facility. And the mission statement, was very much like, stuck on, we have to use the word positive reinforcement training only. And I think that might be something that we have to be careful about, because it might limit some things. Not because, we want to do anything aversive. That's what I was getting back to. Maybe an animal welfare based is, I don't know, something. What's the right words? Let's see. I still get caught up in labels as I branch away from the hierarchy. Yeah, I understand. And Shanamasa says, we feel that nonlinear analysis can reveal more information that we can get from linear analysis, a very interesting lens. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where it helps in sort of getting away from the labels, I think. Yeah, because you start to see, oh, well, all these different things are influencing the behavior and impacting why the animal is behaving the way it is. I'm going to talk about, how I'm doing this upcoming presentation for the Global Online Animal Training Series. And I was really thinking about, guys, I watched the Bill Cosby thing last night. We have to talk about Bill Cosby. And I was really thinking about allies and how they support narcissism and people with narcissistic behavior, or, who admit, behaviors associated with narcissism. And one of the segments was about, all these people knew he was doing it. How did they support him? And I was thinking, but the behavior of the allies is completely nonlinear analysis. It's all maintained by every single quadrant. Every single quadrant keeps an ally supporting the behaviors that these people do. Every single quadrant. They get positively reinforced on an intermittent schedule. They get negatively punished. Good things get taken away. They get positively punished if they step out of line. And there's negative reinforcement, obviously, with the positive punishers too. So every single quadrant is maintaining their support for keeping the narcissists, in action, keeping their secrets hidden. So that's why this nonlinear analysis, that's why it's important to be able to, see all the quadrants in effect. So you can't say, well, that, it was good or it's bad per se. You just say they're all happening. That's why it's happening. It's why it's happening. It'll help you understand. It'll help you get the picture and go, that person is also, stuck. That's why they're doing all these things. So, all right. I understand that much better now. I'm more objective. I sure labeled them too, and I don't anymore because of what I learned. Okay. And same here. Negative reinforcement isn't always bad, as we were talking about earlier. Yeah. And again, it depends on the procedure, how it's used in the procedure. And Sean and Moss are saying yes to what everybody's saying there. More so, it's important to know the differences and when it may be more important to use certain ones, or when certain ones are in play, and how to adjust that. Absolutely. Yeah. So, again, we're not saying, that always that you should always use each quadrant per se, in a certain procedure. It's just that I think it's really helpful when we can see them, so you can be a little bit more precise in your intervention. You can be a little bit more, like in the example I just gave you, maybe a little bit more empathetic for what's happening for that person, that you're going, why would you do that? You can say, oh, I get it now. I understand why that person's behaving that way, or why that animal's behaving that way. And instead of being like, they're that individual is evil, bad, you can just say, oh, okay, they're stuck. They're influenced by all these things going on in their environment. So then it just gives you more tools, and so that's why we got to, see all those things. We got to look for all those things going on at the same time. So, yeah. And so like on this one here where I'm talking about jesses and tethering, again, I know that's more of a bird of prey, raptor type scenario. And we may not have a lot of people here that work with those animals. But, again, I was reading some old material, and it was really interesting because the particular thing I read, did a whole, justification for it because of, it blamed the animal. It was really weird. It was so weird. It was like, well, you have to do it with some animals. And I was like, ooh, interesting. Like some animals, you just have to do it because they're going to hurt you. And it was like, interesting approach. And, you know, like and if you don't know what jesses are, those are leather straps that would, like in this owl, it doesn't have the equipment on. It doesn't have jesses on. It just has anklets on, and the jesses would go through the little grommet, the little metal circle you see on the anklet there, and they would be hanging off. And if the bird was sitting on the glove, the person could hold on to those leather straps in their glove and hold on to the bird so it couldn't go anywhere. And so, and I'm hoping soon to do something with this guy, Thomas Anderson, who a long time ago wrote this really great paper and about not using jesses and tethering with birds, and we just got to get it scheduled. And it was really great just talking about, you know, we don't do it with other birds. Why do we have to do it with these guys? And just talked about, you know, more about the science behind why we could get away from it. And again, when you go on the you know, if you talk to different falconers, or if you read the stuff of the falconers, you can see how you know, the same conversation is going on there, and that there's some that, you know, don't rely on it so much and some that might rely on it more. Yeah, and so it's really interesting. Again, you can see that same thing where people might look at, like, the bird requires it, or is it just the trainer needs to change their thinking, you know? So it's really interesting, if you changed your thought process, that you can manage things differently. So yeah. So going back to changing your thinking, I do have a video of some flying. This goes back to the weight and the response towards food acquisition, and just maybe just some fun stuff to see. So this is a macaw. Even though this macaw is being flown on its own, there are other macaws with us that are just in crates nearby. And so this bird is one that is, you know, not weight managed, and we're just getting her some exercise. And so she's just kind of doing some of her first flights and outside and getting some practice at Frank Buck Zoo. Another lap. Oh, got a big push from the tail there.
There you go. Yeah, close a little bit there.
She's like, I'm tired.
Woohoo! Good job.
Good. That was good. Good exercise for them. So Kelly says, not relying on weight management and jesses has forced me to become a better trainer. Oh, that's so cool. Definitely more sensitive to what the animals are telling me and more creative in my approaches to problem solving. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you know, and I was rereading the article that Thomas wrote just the other day, and it was in 2009, so it was quite a while ago. And there's some of the things that he wrote in there were just so compelling. One that really struck me, and I know I'm not going to quote him correctly, but the wording was sort of about, like, you know, when you think about like you look at this little owl here, and you think about like an owl like that, like, you know, on jesses, and it's baiting. And he was talking about, quote, the ugly bait. And for those of you that, you know, may not work with birds of prey, so think about the owl is trying to fly away. And it just keeps flying and flying and flying until it's exhausted and hanging upside down, and it doesn't want to stay on the glove. And there are animals that, that they're in that situation. I'm assuming not our audience here, because we have very sensitive trainers here that I'm sure would be participating in this. But so there's this owl that doesn't want to be there, but it is being forced to stay there against its will, and to the point that it's hanging upside down, and they can't even push it upright to stay on the glove, and it just tries to leave again, and to the point that it's hanging upside down exhausted. And we call that, and he called that the ugly bait. And he says, imagine that in front of an audience, and the words coming out of the person's mouth is, saying to appreciate and love nature. But you can tell the audience is just like, seeing an owl that wants to get away. And he said, and he was talking about like how the audience is trying to connect with this animal who clearly wants to get away with you, yet the speaker is telling you to ignore your feelings of compassion for that animal that wants to get away. Just pretend like it's not happening, what you're seeing. And my heart was breaking, because I knew I could picture exactly what he's talking about, because I've certainly seen it. And it just made you think, like, there's got to be a better way to do that, and so I really appreciated that whole article and what he was writing and saying, he's right, there has to be a better way to do that. You can't stand in front of an audience with a bird hanging upside down and say love animals, and the majestic, beautiful owl that's hanging upside down in your hand that wants to escape from you. That it just doesn't make sense. So obviously there's more going on there than just equipment. That's there's obviously some training that's not working in that place if you have an owl that's constantly trying to escape from you. But whether it's an owl that shouldn't be in programs, or the training's wrong, or a whole slew of things, but it does make you think about a whole bunch of things that could be done differently there. But it does make you go back to, well, do they have to be on equipment? Can they, I don't know. So I don't know. There was a lot of things that made me think in reading that article, and I'm glad that somebody wrote that article to make you think about it. And, it happened to be Thomas Anderson in 2009, at least for the first time that I saw it. So I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, so let's see, what other thoughts? You guys have other things that you've changed in your thought process since getting into this field? I know there's more things that I'm going to be changing, I'm sure, as I keep going, as I keep thinking and keep learning. And I don't want to end it on a sad, oh my gosh, owls hanging upside down kind of thought. Any others? We covered, what did we cover? We covered what should we call ourselves? What kind of trainers are we? That's in Eland, by the way, if anybody didn't know. This is a place in Texas here where you can drive through. That was during the pandemic, and they just started letting us drive through in Johnson City, and that Eland was very friendly. We talked about choice and control, and linear versus nonlinear contingency analysis, and then timeouts and labeling the learning processes, and different ways of managing birds of prey. So those were some of the things that I thought about. And maybe you guys will have some more as you start thinking about it. So I might get into the recap then, but you can keep typing in there if you have some more ideas. But for me, as we reflect on the merging worlds of animal training and behavior science, we see we are always learning from these two fields, or two areas, two disciplines. The terminology in the two communities can sometimes create challenges. However, we find common ground can help provide clarity and precision. When we share across these disciplines, it's like putting a puzzle together, I think is the way that I see it, and seeing the picture more clearly. And this allows us to get past those kind of traditional approaches and thinking, because, tradition carries the good and the bad. That's what we kind of have to remember in our application, and move towards more evidence-based approaches, ultimately resulting in improved animal welfare for the animals we steward. And Annetta says, I also used to never use luring. Oh yeah. And I don't mind using it to get behavior started today. Yeah, I think that's one of those ones that we used to always hear in the animal animal training. Never use luring. And I definitely am with you there. I don't have a problem with luring to get behavior started. And then, of course, we try to get past it if we can. Yeah, just another tool. And I think this kind of goes in with your presentation that you did for goats, Annetta, that, it also depends ultimately on what's your goal. Like I think with your presentation, your that you did for goats, a lot of it was about there are times when we are trying to, minimize stress and get something done, that is going to be beneficial for the animal in the long run. And if it means we're just going to lure and feed through the procedure, then so be it. It may not be that we're getting to a behavior that's, completely trained and, we reinforce afterwards. And so if that means luring and feeding through the procedure, so be it, but if in the end, the animal is much calmer, then that's fine. Everything considered, time, staff, environment. Yep. I'm with you on that. So I hear you. Yeah. I think, I remember there, you made me think about something else. I remember there was a time when I was very self-conscious about whether an animal, like that I had to present my SD, the animal did the behavior, and there was a bridge and a reinforcer, and it had to look picture perfect like that, sort of like that, like what you envision at like a marine mammal presentation, like at a dolphin presentation or something. And I remember if it didn't look like that, then I wasn't a very good trainer. And now I'm kind of like, I don't care. I think I have more fun discussing, all the little details, about like how you get something started. And, I have more fun with all the intricacies of it. Not so much does it look really clean. That doesn't interest me as much. There's other things that I find far more interesting than, or even problem solving. Like, solving a behavior problem might be more interesting to me than do I have this wonderful clean behavior. So there's so much more to it, isn't there? Yeah, smiling, exactly. Marine mammal procedure, not to generalize at all. Oh, yeah. So, not to generalize at all about, what it might look like. But you know what I mean in terms of like that picture perfect show behavior. And I was also listening this morning, to a human article about rumination. And so like, learning about like adjunctive behaviors to me, like that's really fascinating. Like I want to find out more about that and, bridge that gap of what's going on in animal behavior and in the animal training world. And Holly says, I find there's a big gap between beginner resources and the professional world of animal and of trainers. I'm trying to humbly hang amongst all of you and keep up with a horse owner trying to evolve and learn. Stop. I think we're all about like everybody being here and hang and talk and chat, and we'll grow together. That's the way I look at it. I think we're all somewhere in this journey, somewhere evolving and learning. So hang along, come and hang and chat. I think of all the things that I've said wrong and tried to correct and learn along the way. I stumble on my words all the time. And so, but yeah, we're hanging and learning together. So please do. Look at that. We did our hour here. So as I said, for goats coming up, we are going to talk about, in my presentation, that's going to be talking about, basically how narcissism affects our animal training industry and how it affects animal welfare in the long run. And so I am going to talk about, this is not my word, just so you know, flying monkeys is not my word, but there is a word that's used in relation to narcissism, about the people that support narcissists, and they call them sometimes flying monkeys, or, maybe a nicer word is allies. But, this is basically the person that benefits by keeping the narcissist's secrets hidden. But I also tend to think of them as a person who's also kind of stuck, in that situation sometimes, because they are also under the effect of really of contingencies that are keeping them there. And they may have 0 degrees of freedom that keep them there. So they're operating under intermittent schedules of reinforcement. There's negative reinforcement going on. There's positive punishment going on. There's negative punishment going on. And so we'll talk about examples and in this so that you can understand that, because it's hard. You don't understand why someone might support these people. And boy, I'll tell you, like I said, I watched the whole Bill Cosby thing last night, and it's hard. It's sad because there's also things that that the people do that's really good, and then at the same time there's all this stuff that's happening that's really bad, and you're like, whoa, why would someone support? And it's very conflicting. It's very hard. So anyway, we'll get into it, but relate it to animal training and how it affects welfare of animals in the long run. So I hope that you can join me. If you're a member, you can attend for free for the live. You can catch the recording later. But if you'd like to participate live, just go to, if you're a member, send me an email. If you're not a member, go to atfgoats.com and you'll find the link to register there. So what's happening with my legal case? I'm going to be heading to Florida soon, next week actually. But just to kind of, and that's to see the judge for the motion to dismiss. And just to kind of remind everybody what's in our motion to dismiss is our key points, is that their claim violates the Florida anti-SLAPP statute. And if you want to learn more about what a SLAPP claim is, it's a strategic lawsuit against public participation. And so we're fighting back with the anti-SLAPP statute. And I do have a page with more information about what SLAPP suits are. And so the anti-SLAPP basically will say, is basically saying that this is it prohibits people from filing a lawsuit that is without merit, and primarily because the person against whom the suit was filed exercised their constitutional right of free speech in connection with a public issue. And we're also saying that we are both public figures within the animal training industry, and we engaged in a long-standing and ongoing public debate. And as a result, public figures typically voluntarily expose themselves to an increased risk of injury from defamatory falsehoods. The plaintiff's lawsuit also pulls a handful of sentences out of context, 2 minutes and 23 seconds to be exact, of a nearly 90-minute video. And the court must consider all the words used, not merely a particular phrase or sentence, so no cherry picking is allowed. And the statements complained of are not capable of defamatory meaning, or they are statements of opinion or hyperbole, I can't say it, sorry, neither of which constitute actionable libel or slander. And additionally, statements that contain true or substantially true information are not defamatory, even if a communication is merely unflattering, annoying, irksome, or embarrassing, or that hurts only the plaintiff's feelings. It is not actionable. And the plaintiffs made additional vague allegations not based on specific evidence. So that update will also be on the letterspeakforanimals.com, and so you can learn more about that. So that's been taking up a lot of my time lately, unfortunately, so I haven't been as available to you all as I would like to, but hopefully that will change coming soon. And tomorrow, if you are a member, you can join us for Tower Talk. Same time tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central Time, and we'll talk some more training. And if you're not a member, you can still join for 25% off using the code discount code sunglasses, which will be ending March 1st. Getting tongue-tied there. Sorry, guys. All right. Well, look at that. We're at exactly 12 noon. Yeah, my brain's a little fried. I've been basically writing nonstop for a week on anything that everything except animal training, except for yesterday. So I'm looking forward to getting back and focusing on animal training soon, I hope, and that'll be a wonderful welcome relief. So there you go, guys. I have to say, next week there will be no live stream. I will be going to court, so I won't be here. But yeah, I look forward to hopefully being able to be with you the week after, and and we'll get back into it. And there we go. So I appreciate you all being here this week, and hopefully I'll see some of you guys tomorrow, and we'll talk training for another hour or so and keep it going. All right, I think that's it. I'm going to let you go and enjoy the rest of your day and your evening, and I will look forward to seeing you soon. And again, thank you everybody so much for your support. And Sean and Masa say thank you for the live stream. Great discussion. Well, I appreciate you all coming, and hopefully I'll get more time for video, and more time to develop some things for you. So I kind of feel like I've been stretched a little bit thin lately. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting back to something that looks a little bit more normal. All right. And then it says, thank you for taking your precious time to do live stream. Well, yeah, I'm hoping things are gonna change soon. All right, and another good one. Okay, you guys, I appreciate you all. So thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.